I think I could write a novel. Here's my thing when I go to fiction, though. I start to believe in the characters so much and believe those are real people. That should be live action. Again, grabbing the dream and bringing it down to nonfiction, to reality. You got any advice for a 56-year-old man?
I have no advice, but if you write a novel, I'm reading it. This is Hungry Dogs. I'm James Patterson, and this is a biggie. This is a big guest. It's Matthew McConaughey. Wow, yes. The thing about Matthew is, and one of the things, I read his book, Greenlights, and I just read his book of poetry. The guy is a really good writer. He's a one of a kind. He's an Academy Award winner and one of the most iconic actors in Hollywood today. And as I said, he really is a great writer. Greenlights is still on the bestseller list, New York Times. And he now has a work of poetry called Poems and Prayers. We talk about why he writes, how he thinks about storytelling, and what drives him now. You're going to love this one. You really will. He's amazing. There's nobody like him. Matthew McConaughey. Yeah. I read Greenlights and loved it, and I really like Poets and Prayers, which I finished over the weekend, and I liked them a lot. So that makes me excited about doing this. One of the things, and I don't know if this is your language, but I like it, the notion of eternal optimist, hopeful skeptic. I love that, hopeful, and man of faith. Hopeful skeptic is really interesting to me in the sense that I almost think that if we could turn this country around, if we could turn the cynics into skeptics.
Yes.
We could literally, because that means your mind is at least open to hearing the other side of things.
Just pull them back to the ledge, not off the ledge. Yeah, just to the ledge.
Open your brain a little bit. And that's one of the things I loved about Greenlights and the poetry and the prose in the book as well, and prayers. That notion of struggling and thinking things through and rethinking and all that. So tell me about that stuff a little bit.
Yeah, so it's kind of the reason I wrote the Poems and Prayers book is because I started to notice myself getting a little cynical. And I've swore I remember writing to myself when I was 20 years old. Boy, cynicism. That's an old man's disease. That's a way to die early and still be walking around. Don't go there. The world pounds us down. Reality, the blacks and whites and clarity that we have with youth starts to can get compromised in shades of gray. And you look around, you start going, yeah, I guess it's just the way it is. Or you go, yeah, I guess it's just the way I am. We let ourselves get away with things and don't stand on what we believe in or stand up against what we don't in certain ways. Look around. The news feeds you all kinds of reasons to be cynical. And I didn't like it. I started noticing I was looking down my nose at people, kind of condescending them a little bit, or thinking someone's not worthy, or, I wasn't trusting people as much or believing in others as much, which led to me either getting too egotistical in a falsely selfish way about myself, or also distrusting my own self. And so I said, all right, as I've always been someone who thought and believes art emulates life. I always look at the nonfiction first and try to go, hey, let's look at the facts from reality and how can we make that the dream? That's how I've always looked at life. I flipped it on this and I said, look, let's go to the dream first, the ideal, and see if we can bring that down to earth and make that real. So Poems and Prayers, they're not literal. It's not necessarily, the fact-based maths of how the world works. That's why they're poetry. That's why they're in song. That's why they rhyme. That's why they're a prayer. They're a wish. They're a hope. They're a belief in seeing the world in a way that I believe it can be, still believe it can be, see people in a way that we can be, that slowly gotten shaved off with age and experience. And I don't want to get it too shaved off just yet.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Isn't that one of our fights? Could that be one of the primary fights of man? How long
I think it is. It becomes harder, as we all know right now, when we have such hardened cynics, and we have to deal with them constantly. So that becomes harder and harder. Every day we wake up and we confront this cynicism. There has to be cynicism because nobody could think the way some of these people are expressing themselves. At any rate, but the whole notion of poetry is interesting to me too, in terms of, I think you phrased it, just a way to make more sense of life. which I love. I was very lucky. I worked my way through college, undergraduate, well, actually graduate school as well. I'm going to talk about Vanderbilt, Texas at some point, but because I went to Vanderbilt. But I
Yes,
worked at
I
this
tried. I
hospital,
didn't get in.
and Robert Lowell was a patient there, and there was one other English major who was an aide, and we both just spent as much time as we could just listening to this guy. And he was just very disappointed. Both times he was there, he hadn't gotten some prize that he wanted to get, but he would just sit in his room and just talk about explain his poetry, which I loved. And I had the same experience at Vanderbilt with James Dickey, who was also, to me, one. Do you remember his poem "Falling"? Do you remember that one?
I don't know. No,
It's
sir.
a great one. It is just a flight attendant, stewardess, whatever it was back then, falling out of an airplane, and the poem is, I don't know how many 8 or 9 pages, and it's just what she goes through in her head, falling out of this airplane.
Mm-hmm,
It's a wonderful poem, for me anyway. But you just talk about the poetry a little bit and rhyme and why that appeals to you, and rhyming, which is
Yes. So music's always been a muse of mine. It's a muse of mine when I write. It's a muse of mine in acting. It's a muse of mine in sports. In writing, like Greenlights. Boy, if I could get the music to the very first line of the story, which may take me when I woke up at 6 a.m., that may take me till 3 p.m. And I'm not getting out of bed until I get the right music for that line. As soon as that line has the right sort of swag or movement, music to it, the rest of the story just writes itself. So it's a musical meter. A lot of the poems that I've gotten here are musical meters. I woke up with the well, and lines and choruses and verses started fitting that meter. And then I'll just try to hang on to that meter and write to that meter and go. And then I look up hours later and I have a look at what I got and then see if it's worth anything. But it's usually to a musical meter. Rhythms to a scene in acting. There's a rhythm. There's a different rhythm to comedy than there is drama. Rhythm to storytelling.
Yeah.
No,
The tone.
Yeah,
And
a
for
rhythm
me,
you
that-
and I would have now with an hour to talk would be very different than a 5-minute interview with Jimmy Kimmel. There's a rhythm to our conversation, and knowing we have more time and a longer form to speak of.
Yeah.
And then the rhyming part. Look, some of my stuff is I would call it Dr. Seussy. I mean, I think it's.
What's wrong with Dr. Seuss? No,
I'm a fan of Dr. Seuss.
No, I'm kidding.
And a part of that's, I'm talking to the kid in all of us in a way, in a lot of my poems. And sometimes I'd look down and I'd go, you could consider that cheesy. And I would go, perfect. Let's keep that just as it is.
Look, it is. It's honest, and that's what came out that day, and that was the tone, and that was whatever you woke up with in the spirit. I did a book, a kid's book about Muhammad Ali, which his widow, who also went to Vanderbilt, but she wanted to correct the notion about him when he was growing up in Louisville, and the fact that a lot of people thought he was just a bad student and not very bright, which isn't really accurate. He had a learning disability. But he obviously loved rhyme, and I did it with Kwame Alexander, the book that we did on him back in the Louisville days when he was a kid. And what's interesting about the book is Kwame likes to write in poetry. I don't know if you've ever come across this stuff. He writes a lot of stuff for kids. So with the book, I wrote prose, and we go back and forth between my prose and his poetry. And so it's a very different kind of a book, and very appropriate because it was about Ali, who similarly, the rhyme and this whatever, just what you've been talking about.
A lot of times I'm not trying to rhyme, and I'll even malaprop and end up rhyming, and my kids will go, "Hey, is that another poem?" I go, "I didn't mean for it to be. It just kind of came out that way." A lot of times I do it on purpose. Part of the rhyming in this was, look, I'm pushing at something about belief and trying to push people with the Poems and Prayers book to it's self-inspired and go, don't give up. And if you can put it, but nobody likes to get advice. I know I don't. But one of the last I don't like being told what to do. I don't think anyone does. I love to preach, but I got to watch my preaching because it can be like, who the hell do you think you are? Get off your damn pedestal, McConaughey. And so I get that. So if you rhyme it, all of a sudden it's digest, and now it's got music. Now I can digest. Now the broccoli is the candy, and it's good for you. But hey, I can dance to this. It's sort of like what I say on, you can have a beer on the way to the temple. Well, no, let's. I think we can have music and we can dance on Sunday morning at the church. I'm trying to sell Sunday morning like a Saturday night.
I had a trick with our son Jack. Similarly, once again, I don't like to preach at people either. I try not to. I just did Viola and I just did a novel, and we were talking to some people about maybe doing the thing. And what they said about it, it could have been a very preachy novel, and it isn't.
Right.
And that's what they like about it, because it deals with abortion, but there's no preaching in it.
This is something that I learned, and it may just be one trick, but what I learned in writing Greenlights is obviously you can write three persons, right? The first person, I. You speak in the I, no one can really judge it because you're saying, look, it's my experience, right? From the first person. Then you got third person, the royal we, when you're talking for everyone, which is a beautiful plural place to get
unlimited to. Third person, you're really going.
But it's also can be like, whoa, VOG, voice of God,
yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then there's the second person, you. And I had to watch, I would even write stories in the second person and have to go back and go, too preachy. You're talking at, people will take it as you're talking at them. So I would mix it into first and third and royal we's and the personal individual I's. And I think it's part of where in writing, I don't know if you can call it a trick, but it's a way to translate better or more clearly with people, because you got to watch those second person U's, because you get too many U's, people go like you're talking at me.
Yep.
Quit talking.
What I was going to say about Jack, when I had a thought for him, not so much advice, but a thought for him, because I would usually start out with, I know you've already thought of this, but, and that would disarm him.
Beauty. Yeah. Uh-huh. Leave the truth in the asker's kitchen.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Or you always hear, I love it when you hear wise men go, someone else says something, you go, it is as you say. we all want to own. I tell directors all the time, I'm like, look, every actor wants to believe that every idea was ours. And I know that they're not. So just trick me. I'm easy to manipulate. Just trick me into believing it was my idea. Actors want to believe it is. And so
from what I understand, you like to ad-lib. You ad-libbed a bit of that, the Wolf of Wall Street, that big thing on the terrace there. Yeah.
Yes.
Which was spectacular.
Thank you. That was, look, I've talked about this before, and I think you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes in a script or when you're reading, like I'm reading some on Stoics now, and I'll get one line that I'll go, ooh, that's a launch pad line. I've got to take a walk with. I'm going to get up, shut the book. I have to walk with that line for a week and unpack what that means, or what is the world through that lens. In a script, acting wise, you get a launch pad line sometimes that you go, oh, the entire character's in that world. Let me look through that prism, and then I can write an encyclopedia based on looking through the prism of that one line that they spoke. Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, the line that sent me a flight was this guy talking to Leonardo's character going, the secret to this business is cocaine and hookers. And I went, all right, what if that's funny, but what if it's not funny? What if this guy he's being very serious? That's the secret. Well, unpack somebody who sees the brokering business through that lens as the secret. There's a whole world on that guy. So then it became a certain musicality, and then the improvisation, and then it was very fun. But that was the launchpad line that I was like, well, if a character believes that, and they're not doing that for a joke, they're not saying that line is a joke. They're saying this is really the secret. Well, let's unpack that person.
Yeah. I write a bunch of books with Mike Lupa, who's a very good sports writer and a good writer, period. And we were talking this morning. We talk about six times a day about a character in a book that we're messing around with now. And it's a woman. She's very attractive, very successful as a defense lawyer. This guy needs a defense lawyer. And I said, there are some women who you would think they could have whatever they wanted, but at the base, she's so confident, whatever. She 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 um, she does not consider herself worthy, and you'd never know that from watching her. She does not consider herself worthy of love, and always feels she's going to get found out because she's never
Yeah.
with anybody. She seems to be, and you go like, why isn't once again, in terms of understanding that character.
Then there's a whole secret monologue you have for her and a subtext for her, I suppose, that whether it's written out or not, there's certain cues for characters that you can go when I talk about a launchpad line, or when something like you just said that goes, all right, that gives my character the monologue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I believe, which is an identity, right? And every character, even in fiction and in life, if we have our monologue, we're a hell of a lot better at having a good dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If we know who we are, how we feel about something, and we have our judgment and identity, and we're much more attractive, much more able to have a great dialogue with the world. But without a monologue, without the who am
I think one of the things I loved about the stuff is that struggling to find that core in different things. There was some line in that poem Birmingham where they couldn't care less if you give a damn about Birmingham.
Yeah.
In terms of not everybody there, but in general, that's, our son went to one of the schools, and the good thing about the school, the culture of this school is, the kids go in there with the attitude, and the teachers their attitude is, you're all bright, so don't beat each other up and support one another. Now, not every kid does it, but that's kind of the culture.
Yeah. Where's the school?
It's Brown.
Okay, Brown University.
Obviously, they just had my son's pretty good at it didn't, he's been out of there for 5 or 6 years. But that class, that exact class, he was a teacher assistant there 2 years in a row. That classroom.
Oh, wow.
You're a little spooky. Yeah.
I bet so. Do you get a little shiver on that?
It's terrible. It's terrible. No, yeah, he's pretty good at compartmentalizing stuff and going okay, that's terrible. But it's an interesting thing. I talked to Clinton a fair amount, President Clinton, and this notion of, especially for him, something happens, and something happens every morning that's sort of upsetting, it seems like these days. But if you can't do something about it, don't let it ruin your day. And if you can do something about it, do it. Well, people get there all crazed about it, but if you can't do anything, just move on, man. If you can.
I hear you, but and maybe this is me hanging on to trying to be naive, but I've had talked with politicians, and I won't say their names, but some about the people they've had in their close circle, people they've spent holidays with, people they've broken bread with, that then went and either wrote a tell-all or said things on CNN or Fox, and you're like, that was not your place to tell. And their response was, oh no, that's just politics, man. Don't worry about that. Or I've talked to businessmen and CEOs that have 26 lawsuits, and the tab is growing daily. They wake up to a new one, and I'm like, how do you sleep at night? And they're like, oh no, it's just part of business. Again, where do we get to, as we first started our conversation, what things in life to go, oh yeah, that's just how it is. And I'm not ready to say that it's okay for someone to come into my secret and invite it into my family and then go off and share tales that weren't theirs to tell. I'm not ready to go, yeah, lawsuits, litigation, just part of waking up and doing business. I'm not ready for that. And part of that, some would say, would be being naive.
I'm James Patterson, and I like to write longhand, pencil to paper, but this next sponsor seriously has me considering whether I should change that, because whether you're writing your first book or, like me, your more than first book, the same problems always show up. You're almost done with your outline, thinking you've got a bestseller on your hands, then it hits you, that amazing scene you wrote months ago, it completely breaks your plot. Oh, no. That's where Novelium comes in. Built by writers for writers, it's like having a story editor sitting beside you, quietly catching the stuff you'd miss, stuff like pacing issues, continuity errors, big problem, even character mix-ups. It works with however you like to write. You can write in Novelium's distraction-free editor or upload your draft from Word or Google Docs. As you write, it automatically builds a character dashboard, a word codex, and a timeline that flags inconsistency, all without changing your words or your voice. And unlike those AI writing tools, Novelium doesn't write for you or use your data. It just keeps you organized, private, and in control, which I like. So what are you waiting for? Stop the story headaches and actually go finish your book. Try Novelium today and get your first month free at novelium.so with code Patterson. That's NOVELIUM.SO, code Patterson. Yahoo. It'll make your life easier. That's a good thing. I wear glasses, obviously, but I have plenty of people in my life who wear contacts, including my wife, Sue, my lovely wife, Sue. And I hear all the time from Sue especially about what a hassle they are. But even I know all they need to do is use 1-800-CONTACTS, which is what Sue uses for real. They'll deliver the exact lenses your doctor prescribes, fast and free, right to your door. No hassle, no appointments, no waiting rooms. Sue has a tricky prescription, and getting contacts from her doctor in New York City was challenging, to say the least. So she turned to 1-800-CONTACTS for fast and easy delivery to Florida. Orders ship quickly, returns and exchanges are free, and if you ever find a lower price, their best price guarantee means they will beat it. What's really cool is something called their Express Exam. It's a quick online vision exam that lets you renew your current prescription from home in less than 10 minutes. Sue has done that. It's terrific. Sue loves it because it means she doesn't need to fly to New York for an eye doctor appointment. Getting contacts doesn't have to be a hassle. Order online at 1-800-CONTACTS.com or download the free 1-800-CONTACTS app today. We're doing Caitlin Collins tonight, and I really like her. And the reason we got together was I was going to be on the show, and during the commercial, it had to do with libraries, and she's really big on libraries. That's kind of how she became who she is. She just spent a lot of time as a kid in libraries. And she came out, and I said, my wife went to Wisconsin. I said, Wisconsin's going to play Alabama. You want to come? She said, yes. So we went out. It was in Wisconsin that year. And then this year, we went to Alabama. Both years, Wisconsin got their ass kicked in both places.
Wisconsin volleyball just kicked our girls back.
I saw that. I know. Yeah, well, they're good. Yeah, that was surprising. Nebraska got knocked out, too, by Texas A&M.
Oh, yeah. That's right. A&M. It was on the other side with Pitt, and then in Kentucky and Wisconsin.
Well, weirdly, I was going to say sports, but since we're into it a little bit, I know you got the soccer team in Austin. I have a piece of the Love Bee Austin women's volleyball team there.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I have a third of that.
How did you be part of that in Austin?
I don't know. I like women's sports. I got initially with the WNBA, or not the college basketball got me into it originally. And Oriema and I'm blanking on her name, but they were both fans of Alice Cross. So I got connected with them a little bit, and I loved it. I loved it. I love the way they play, because the teamwork and the enthusiasm and not too much dunking and a lot of accuracy from the field and stuff like that. At any rate, but that got me interested in women's sports. I also have in the soccer, we have a thing with it's a women's investment group with the Boston Legacy and San Diego Wave. And women, so it's just kind of fun and interesting, and I like it. And I'm going to send this to Caitlin Clark because I want to talk to her. We have scholarships at the University of Iowa at the Writers Workshop there, which is really important because it's one of the best and one of the only ones left, and it's like 90 kids.
One of the last Writers Workshops. At the university level.
Yes, yeah, and they're good. They really. Sue and I went out there last year and met the kids. And once again, no advice. Just my only advice is, don't get disappointed if you can't make money writing the stuff you're writing, because it's not for big audiences. But you can make money with big audiences if you feel like it, if you want to. I don't know, whatever.
James, let me ask you this question. Can I ask you a question? Do you have an opinion on the university system that is in place now that is so similar to what has been in place for so long?
Well, I think it needs to change radically.
It does, doesn't it? I mean, the work, what is needed by the young men and women getting out is vastly different at a very dynamic range, more dynamically now than since Industrial Revolution?
Yeah, you've talked a little bit. I don't like to get into politics, and I won't. But you said something to the effect of the right and the left are so far out they're not even on the road anymore. Right. And that's one of the issues with schools, where you got to be able to say what you got to say. You got to be able to have thoughts. You just can't have somebody come in here and control everybody's thinking in a classroom. I really didn't like undergraduate. I was comfortable at Vanderbilt because it was all English, because I was working for a PhD in English there, and it was all stuff I wanted to read. And the best course that I did down there was when I came up to this professor and I said, "Look, here's like 30 novels that I've been dying to read and I haven't. How about a course where we read, I don't know, however many you want to?" And it was just me and him. And we did about 15 novels. And we would get together once or twice a week and just talk about, he had read half of them anyway, so it was easy for him. And it could actually work as a course for everybody. If the professor were good and you got 100 kids there, I'm going to trust you all to read the books that you've wanted to read. I'm just going to talk generally about fiction or poetry or plays or whatever the hell. And I want you to write papers on these books that you wanted to read. You could do it, and every kid would want to be in the class.
Yeah.
I love stuff like that. It's more closed than it needs to be. I mean, that's a big problem I have.
The work I'm trying to do over there, I have a class that I created with film and with advertising in the College of Communication. And it's the classes I wish I would have had or would have been available when I was at school at University of Texas between 89 and 93. And they're based on, I was at college there, film school, between my junior and senior year, I get a job on Dazed and Confused, my first film. Well, I'm on set for 3 weeks. I came back from that set with 3 weeks experience as an actor, knowing more about film production than I had learned in over a year and a half of books.
Yeah.
And so I'm raising my hand, telling the teacher, actually, that's not the way it happens. It goes down like this. Well, they didn't like me for that. I didn't give a damn. And I was like, oh, that practical experience. How can we give kids the practical experience? And you know what hit me? You'll this will hit a nerve with you as a writer. I'm talking to the journalism students one day in their class, and boom, alert comes up. There's a protest down at the UT Tower. And I was like, what are y'all doing? Get out of the room. Get out of here. Go cover it. And they're like, well, we don't have that on the, and I was like, okay, this is a problem right here. Yeah. This is a problem. You got to be, it just get out of the classroom.
Yep. That's a big problem in terms of who's teaching. There should be more with videos of people that really know what they're talking about in the classrooms, listening to. Interestingly, when I was in advertising, and as I might joke, I've been clean for 30 years, but when I was in it, my biggest recruiting place was University of Texas. Because they had at that point, and there was this one guy there, I can't remember his name, but he was just great at it. And he was really good at getting these kids, and they were prepared and they were ready, and it was relevant stuff. And it was just, I hired about 10 kids out of there over a course of 5 years or so. Yeah, very good. But that thing about, it's just so many, unfortunately, not all, but a lot of professors, they just go from school to back, and they just stay in school.
Right.
And they never really have been whatever the heck, a lawyer, a doctor, an actor. And I remember I had one class in one of the, undergrad, and I had worked for 5 or 6 years at a very good mental hospital in Massachusetts. That's where I worked my way through school. So I really had a lot of experience with mental illness and stuff. And I just thought this guy was so full of crap, and he hated me. And I wasn't trying to say that he was full of crap, but I would just be saying stuff. I'd go like, well, that's not making sense to me, and he couldn't stand that,
Yes. I mean, how much of it though, you said it earlier about schools they're too closed. There's less. You got to have the freedom of the speech and opinion. So, in a general way, in life, in America, in schools, and as parents with children, there's a structure that's in place. And if you follow this structure and climb the rungs of this ladder in this direction, you can go succeed to this certain level. Okay. And the masses will do that. But exceptions, as a parent and as an institution of government even, but even school education, isn't part of the test the initiation? Well, let's see which of you individuals got the moxie to not stutter and say, I'm going outside the lines and I'm doing it my way. And we go, you can't do that. And that's part of the initiation. See if you'll flinch. No, you're not. I didn't ask permission. Boom, I'm going. Wait, that's not like, I didn't ask permission. And then as soon as they do it and commit and we see that the world sees that they weren't bluffing, we go, thank you. Bravo.
I wrote a book, Disrupt Everything, recently, which has to do with basically positive disruption in particular. Everything I've ever done in my life is you did it with Dazed and Confused. You just positively disrupted the process. They wanted you to do something. You had a bigger idea for yourself, and it was a good idea, and they caught on to it. But where that came from, I went down to Vanderbilt. They asked me to talk to all the business students, and I just talked. And then the talk I gave was about disrupting shit and how I had done it in advertising in the book world, and it was just you can only do one book a year. Why is that? Who? I mean, maybe, but who's saying that? Why is that a rule? And where did it come from? And it's just questioning stuff. And but where I started with the kids was I said, "Are you leading a good life?" Or, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, have you been getting on a treadmill to get on another treadmill to get on another treadmill? If you're comfortable with that, so be it. But is that what you're doing? And a lot of kids do. And then, and that's why a lot of these kids, they want to, I want to make my $5 million by the time I'm 32, and then I'll retire, and I'll hate it until I'm 32, but then it'll be okay.
Yeah, right. I get the sweat and toil, and as my older brother Rooster says, well, if everybody only did what they love to do, there'd be a lot of unemployment. I understand that. Sometimes we got to go. I've got to put in the time. I got teenage kids now. We're talking exam time. I'm like, look, sometimes we just got to do the thing that, no, we don't want to do it, but it's kind of what we got to do. It's part of what school's for is the discipline to see if you can meet an appointment, if you can compete with other people in a class. I don't remember how the Liberty Bell cracked either, but I passed that test. Just stay with it, go through the churn, and it'll get more specific as you go along to things like your class you're talking about. Once you got into English at Vanderbilt, it was that, then you were interested. You'll get more specific as you go through this. But part of this is a test to see how you do amongst the masses.
Yeah, no. You draw the distinction in one of the poems, or maybe it's a prose, I don't know, between good men and nice guys.
Yeah.
And I want to throw it a little farther because it maybe even is more useful between, I don't know what you would call them, good women and nice women. Because I think what you're talking about, women, it's maybe even more important.
Well, I'm using the word man as in, I don't know what the term is, as a general. I'm not talking about only man. It's actually in a chapter called Man Up. I'm using the term man up just because it fits the meter better than woman up. You know what I mean? It's just been around a while. I don't know if it's more important for women. I don't know if it's more important for men. I do know.
Only because I find so many women who just have to be nice. They have to be, they're programmed to be that way, even though it's not necessarily who they are. I don't mean they're not nice, but I mean that, And anyway, but go ahead and talk a little bit about it. Yeah.
Well, it comes from, and I think one of the anecdotes that story I was telling personally was a time in my career where I was king of the rom-coms. And the rom-com guy is always he's the nice guy. He's got a job, so on and so, but who cares what job he's got? And hey, if you get really hurt, don't get hurt that bad, and because it's a romantic comedy. And if you love really hard don't love that hard because it's a romantic comedy. Keep it buoyant, skip across the clouds. Hey, this is a light touch. That's fine. But there's no room in those to stand up for what I believed in or stand against what I believed against or to resist what I was against in life. So that's where drama comes in. And drama opens up the ceiling of elation and lowers the basement of pain. And it is up to the individual. How do you feel about that? There's no rules. There's no limitations. There's no one book a year rule on that. Everyone has their own personal feelings. So life's much more like a drama. It has incredible comedy in it. And good drama can be quite funny. Well, there's always a place for the sense of humor there.
Yeah, it's good if you can laugh at stuff sometimes.
I think if laughter, Richard Linklater, director of Days of Confused, and I came across this about 15 years ago. We were like, boy, wouldn't the world and life be a better place if laughter was the default emotion? Like if you weren't sure how to react, just give it a giggle. I think we might get along a lot better. But the good man part is when, for instance, in my you got to sacrifice some things. You got to have judgment. You have to have an identity where you have a discernment to what you prefer and what you don't. You have to go through times of discomfort as a good man, relying and believing that it will bring you a larger treasure in the future. A good man, you can stop a tyrant if you, the good man, keep on a-coming. A nice guy is more like what I would call a little bit dorky. They wear whatever hat I think you might want me to wear. I'm going to be who you want me to be right now, to get along, to not upset the apple cart here, to appease, to whatever you want to do. That's a nice guy. And nothing's wrong with a nice guy, but you never really leave the nice guy respecting him more. Or they never really, when they go home to go to bed and at night, they're not sure what they're for and what they're against, what they believe in and what they don't believe.
Yeah. I have a novel coming in January called The Invisible Woman, and I wrote it with a friend of mine, Susan DeLallo. It's pretty comedic and pretty funny all the way through. But part of it has to do with, at a certain age, women and men, you haven't gone through this, but you might at some point, they're invisible. Literally, they walk down the street, they go and they just, people don't even see them anymore, and it's debilitating for some people. But the other piece of it beyond the physical part, and this gets into this good men and nice guy things notion, is a lot of us go through life and the persona that we put out there is not who we really are. So we are invisible because our real person, we're not showing it.
Okay.
Because socially or whatever the heck it is, we're supposed to be this way, but that's not really who we are. So you're invisible, which is interesting to me.
It is interesting. Let's unpack that a minute, because there's a very popular narrative and has been for ages about can you become your true self? Go deeper inside. Who am I? What's my true self? Right. That's. But then you read someone like Dylan, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Just be the creation. Create yourself to be whoever you want to be, man. Just go be it. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's some amnesty in that to go, aren't we all creations? And is any creation, why may I find it easier to go play a character that is not necessarily, you wouldn't think is closer to who I am? Why would I find that easier and it would come across and translate as having more life than me going to play myself? Maybe because I don't know myself as well. Or is that character just as much or more me and that was my way to express it, than being my true self would be? I just wonder about the pursuit, because they're not contradictions in thoughts, but we're all creations. And that in our creations is also a place to find ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah.
The genius can do anything they want, be anybody they want, but they're always kind of one at a time, it seems. Mm-hmm. That creation at a time, commit to it. And then you can go, well, next, I may be I can contradict myself and be a new creation tomorrow.
I might not have a dog myself right at this very moment, but I know dogs. I've owned many, many, many dogs. At one point, I had 12 Dobermans. You do anything to keep them healthy and happy, right? That's what I love about Ollie, Ollie. It's made for people who care about their dogs the way I did, the way I still do. They offer fresh protein-packed meals made with real human-grade ingredients, all slow-cooked for top nutrition. It's a kind of food you actually feel good about feeding your dog. What's great is how tailored it all is. Ollie builds a custom meal plan around your dog's needs, so every meal is perfectly portioned and easy to serve. It even comes with a scoop and a pup tainer to keep your fridge from smelling like dog food. We don't want that. And the Ollie app is awesome. It really is. You can check in with real experts about your dog's health. You can track meals and see what new recipes they're developing. It's like having a nutritionist for your pup right in your pocket. If old Bumper was still around, one of my old dogs, I know he'd be going crazy at mealtime, and I'd feel great knowing I was giving him the best. Your dog's well-being starts with their food, and that's why Ollie delivers fresh, human-grade food that your dog will love. Head to ollie.com/Patterson. Tell them all about your dog and use code Patterson to get 60%, that's a lot, off your welcome kit when you subscribe today. Plus, they offer a happiness guarantee on the first box. So if you're not completely satisfied, you'll get your money back. It's not going to happen. You'll get your money back, but you will be satisfied. That's ollie.com/Patterson and enter code Patterson to get 60% off your first box.